there, my name's Eleanor Jones. I currently teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ELA. Some of my favorite strategies for engaging students in their learning are active listening strategies. So one of my current favorites is called listening teams. Essentially, I give a group of students a question that they need to try to answer based off of the lesson for that day in as many ways as possible. So some examples of what that question could look like: it could be asking them to connect to another content area, it could be scaffolding up to that next DOK level. It really just depends on what the needs of that lesson are. Then another quick strategy I like to use is taking those worksheets students are used to completing 5, 6, 7 times a day and just putting it on poster paper and incorporating some movement, which definitely helps some students feel engaged for sure. And then when it comes to my own teaching style, I really feel like students benefit from my calm teaching style and demeanor. I know several students aren't super familiar with that, so it catches them a little bit off guard. And then I have been able to de-escalate quite a few challenging student behaviors because of that calm approach. And then one thing I really like to make sure that I do with my students is get to know them a little bit more every day. So one of the ways that I do that is by having a question of the day as they walk in my room. It's typically just a quick this or that, and it's really fun to see how passionate students can get about certain things, for sure. And then I really believe that assessment is incredibly important for educators to use successfully. So an example of how I've used that in my classroom, last quarter we just did a argumentative writing unit. So as a department in ELA, we worked together to take a look at the standards and develop a rubric for argumentative writing. And then with that first pre-assessment, I was able to determine that a lot of my students were struggling to find textual evidence to support the claims that they were making. So we worked a lot on that throughout the quarter, and I was happy to see some really good results by the end. And it helps too to get some good data for our students and IEPs. And then with intentional learning outcomes, I find it really important to start first with standards and use backwards design as well. Another way that I make sure to do that is by looking to my professional learning communities and making sure that we're discussing how can we support our ELL students, how can we support these students with chronic absenteeism that aren't here very frequently. But those are some of my answers. Thank you so much for listening.